So let's talk about the update that TpT released for personalized search within the last couple of weeks. So the first thing that TpT did is they released an updated set of guidelines, which you can find inside of TpT University. If you're not sure how to get to that, you can go to your dashboard, then click on the marketing tab, and then you'll see a link there for TpT University. And then over on the side, once you've clicked to that link, you can find the section that says personalized search, and you can read about all of this yourself. And then this last week, they held a webinar with more details. Really, it was a lot of the same things that we've already been hearing about personalized search, but they talked to us as sellers directly about that, answered a lot of questions that we had. And so today, we're going to be covering what these updated guidelines were and some high points of information. And then at the end, I'm going to kind of tell you my opinion on this because the opinions from the TpT community are kind of all over the place. And so I'll kind of be sharing some of my thoughts on this as well. But first, let's just kind of talk about what personalized search is. Now, I released a video on this back in probably October, whenever they first rolled personalized search out, and they gave us a few details. Since then, we've learned a lot from things that TpT has posted within the TpT forums or updates that they've given here and there during live events. But this is like their official guidelines on it that they've released. And I found some of the information, while it may not necessarily be new, I found it to be very enlightening, kind of the way that they presented it. And there are a few things that stuck out to me. So first, let's talk about what personalized search is. Personalized search, the way that they're explaining it is that it's an additional layer that is built on top of traditional search, or the way that search has traditionally been. So they explained it like this, that when a buyer searches for products on TpT, the TpT algorithm instantaneously ranks products and gives them a ranking, gives them a score based on a number of factors, like how relevant is it to the search terms that the buyer just typed into the search engine? What is its product history like? What kind of reputation does this product have? AKA, do buyers seem pleased with the product that they purchased? Does it have a number of reviews or social proof, etc.? It includes a number of factors, a variety of factors that gives that product a score. And then that's where it would stop. Whichever products have the highest score, those would rank first, and it would go all the way down, right? From highest score to lowest scoring product. And so there were things that you could do to kind of tweak and adjust your product description or your product listing. Maybe you could sell more resources. Maybe you could get more reviews. Maybe you could adjust your keyword search terms, things like that, in order to improve your score. But now what happens with personalized search is, rather than seeing those products listed in order of highest score to lowest score, they're now scrambled. And they're scrambled according to buyer history, or things that TpT knows about the buyer. This could be things like the price point that buyer normally searches for, the grade level that buyer normally searches for, subject, content. It could also be things like whether or not they follow that TpT seller and whether or not they've made purchases from that TpT seller in the past. TpT says that personalized search takes over 500 factors into consideration when scrambling these products and putting them in order. From there, once they've taken these new factors into consideration, these 500 plus factors in consideration based on the buyer's history or what they know about the buyer, then those products get an additional score. So the score is going to be different based on the buyer. So if I, as a math teacher who traditionally used to shop for 7th, 8th Algebra 1 resources, search for a search term, then a product that is tagged for, say, 8th grade is probably going to get a higher score than a product that's tagged for 6th grade based on my previous search history. This is just my understanding of it. And so essentially those items are scrambled for that teacher, and no two buyers should get the exact same order or exact same ranking of products. Okay? So theoretically, and from what TpT has told us, this should lead to more sales or higher earnings for TpT, thus for the teacher author community as a whole. Not saying that each individual teacher author will be making more money, but this should lead to more revenue as a whole for the TpT community and for TpT as a business, because buyers are seeing things that TpT knows that they're more likely to be interested in. Okay? So in theory, all of this sounds wonderful. It all sounds really great. And what TpT has said is that what they are seeing, what they're reporting is that what they are seeing is a 5% increase in earnings for those who are in personalized search test versus the buyers who are shopping with the old traditional search. So they're comparing them side by side. This isn't year over year. This isn't comparing it to last year, but they're running, they've got two groups of people, and the group of people who are in personalized search are spending 5% more money than the group of people who are in non-personalized search. Okay? So we'll get into my thoughts and my opinions on that a little bit later in the podcast. But for now, let's just talk about what some of these updated guidelines are for us as sellers. What can we do as sellers to help increase our products' rankings with this new personalized search? Most of the guidelines that TpT has laid out are all the same. It's the same thing that they have been saying even before personalized search. Make sure you're using keywords that are relevant to your product. Make sure your keywords and your titles are specific and use natural language. But, there's not really anything here that stands out as like new things that you should do. However, there are some interesting updates that for me personally makes me more aware when I'm choosing my keywords and how I'm tagging my products and things like that. So let's get into some of the things that stood out to me. Again, if you want to read the full set of guidelines, you can find that in TpT University. So I'm not going to go through every single one of them. And there may be something that you found particularly interesting that I did not. If so, you feel free to drop it down in the comments. I would love to hear about it. But here are a few things that stood out to me. First is that click-through and conversion rates from search can impact a product's ranking, which that I kind of already assumed was happening in the past. So this isn't super new, except for the fact that they have specifically stated that they are looking at for personalized search, not the product's conversion rate overall, but they're specifically looking at for personalized search, the product's conversion rate from buyers coming through search. Meaning that if my conversion rate from people who are clicking on my product in TpT search is low, that will negatively impact my search rankings, okay? But if I'm driving traffic, say from my email list, or I'm driving traffic from Facebook ads, or from any form of advertising to my product, that conversion rate for search engine ranking is based solely on traffic coming from TpT search, okay? If that was a little confusing, you might have to rewind it and start it over, because they've said this multiple times, and every single time you have to kind of go like, wait, just a second. Let me make sure I've got this. But essentially, if you're driving outside traffic to your product, don't let that deter you from driving outside traffic, because they are saying that your product's conversion rate for your ranking in TpT search that is impacting your search engine ranking, right? That conversion rate is only counting traffic that is coming specifically through TpT search, okay? But that is really important to know, because that means that I can continue to drive traffic to my products without fear of that somehow hurting my search engine rankings later on. The next thing is that when a buyer shows that they are not interested in a product that shows up in their search results, TpT is much less likely to show them that product again. I've witnessed this myself. I've been spending a lot of time in the TpT search engine and doing audits and things like that for our focused coaching inside of RTA, or for one-on-one coaching inside of RTA. And I can tell you that I search it once and then I search it, a couple of minutes later, and I see a completely different set of resources, or at least a new order of the set of resources. So I can attest to this. If a buyer is clicking through to see your product and they don't end up making a purchase, if they go to search for that thing again, for that set of keywords again, your product is much less likely to show up in their search results, because they've shown TpT that they are not interested in your resource. If, however, they wishlist that resource, that shows that they're interested, so it's more likely to show up, and it affects their next set of search results, because they'll be like, okay, they were interested in Lauren's Pythagorean theorem mystery, so maybe we'll show them a few more resources that are mysteries, or a few more resources that are similar in their listings to that resource that the buyer just wish listed. Okay. The next thing is that tagging appropriate standards is extremely important for two reasons. Number one, it's important for conversion rates. If you are tagging multiple grade levels because you're like, well, this could work for all of these grade levels technically, and so then the buyer comes to that product and they don't feel like it is a good fit for them, then that hurts your traffic from the TpT search. It hurts that conversion rate from traffic coming through TpT search. And so if this happens multiple times, then it could hurt your product search engine rankings overall across the board. So that's why we want to be really, really specific, and we know who our target audience is. If I have a product for Pythagorean theorem, we'll throw that out there again. Pythagorean theorem is one of those things that is taught specifically in 8th grade, but then it's reviewed again in geometry and expanded upon, right? So even though it is a resource that I created specifically for 8th grade in times past, and even sometimes now, I'll tag it for 10th grade geometry because I know there's a chance that a 10th grade geometry teacher may want to review that skill. However, I shouldn't be doing that anymore, because if that 10th grade teacher sees it's tagged for 10th grade, but then they get there and realize it's really more suited for 8th grade, and they pass it on by, this over time could hurt my rankings. The other reason why we want to be really specific and not tag outside of our grade level unless it is truly a resource that would work perfectly for another grade level is that this is the piece of information that I found really interesting that I'd never seen TpT say before. And that is, if a buyer has sent a strong signal, these are TpT's exact words, quote unquote, strong signal to TpT that they're looking for a specific grade level, TpT will prioritize resources that only have one grade level tagged. So if, for example, a buyer has sent a strong signal, now what a strong signal is, we don't know. But if they send a strong signal that they're looking for a 5th grade resource, TpT will prioritize resources that are only tagged 5th grade, not 6th grade, not 4th grade, like just 5th grade, and that's it. So this is where it can really pay off to be extremely specific. And a good rule of thumb for this is, if you are a core subject teacher, a good rule of thumb for this is do not tag a grade level unless you can tag a corresponding standard to go along with it. The next piece of interesting information that kind of came out through all of this was that TpT search does not work the same for buyers as it does for sellers. So for sellers, we're frequently searching and looking and trying to figure out where we're ranking, how we're doing, and we're probably a little bit all over the board with our searches. And I know for me too, this is true. And so TpT has said, like, you guys are reporting that you're seeing wonky search results, that things don't look good, and you're not having a good experience with this. And they were like, we realize that we're asking you to trust us with a lot, because we're asking you to trust us that this is working. And what you're seeing is not good. And we're asking you to trust us that it is better for buyers, but it just does not work the same for you guys because you don't search the same way that a buyer would. I will go ahead and share my opinion on this. I understand where they're coming from and what they're saying with this. To me, this makes sense. I know for me as a seller, I do not search the same. I'm constantly looking for a lot of different ideas. I'm not clicking on anything. A lot of times when I'm researching for a product that I'm going to create, I'm not buying other products. I'm just out there going ahead and doing my market research and going down that checklist of things that I need to know before I create that resource. And so if I'm out doing market research and I'm not making purchases, I'm not adding to my wish list, and the purchases that I am making are in a completely different niche, completely different category of clip art and things like that, then of course this would confuse the search engine. And so they've asked us to trust them on that. To me personally, this makes sense, and I see this more and more as I'm doing more and more audits. My search engine is so janky, it has no idea what I'm doing anymore. And I kind of wish that for sellers, that TpT would just take off personalized search and just let us see search the way that it is, see how products are ranked before they get that personalized search score, and just take off personalized search for seller accounts. That's personally what I wish they would do, but we don't have any indication that they have any plans to do that anytime soon. The next thing, and this is not so much a TpT guideline, but it is a statement that TpT made and information that TpT shared with us, is that they only recommend changing your titles 1 to 2 times a year because it messes with Google SEO when you change your titles. I've since been told by members of RTA that the reason that this is because I know nothing about Google search engine optimization, but they told me that it has something to do with the fact that it takes 6 months for like Google to index a web page or something like that and to index that information. And so if you're changing it before they can index it, or if you're changing it right after they've indexed it, then it may take a long time for that to kind of show back up. So TpT recommends only changing it 1 to 2 times a year max. And of course, this changes the game for a lot of us who are frequently going in, checking keywords, and maybe making updates and changes. That could, theoretically, that could hurt you. So I think that this is the key here, is to make sure that you are choosing the appropriate keywords the first time. So making sure that when you're listing that product, that you are truly going in and you're really thinking about your keyword research. What are truly going to be the best keywords for me? Making sure you're using that natural language and making sure you're using appropriate keywords and not seasonal keywords. So not going in and changing like a bundle of seasonal items every single season to be like, okay, now it's Valentine's Day, now it's St. Patrick's Day, like things like that. Choose some evergreen titles that you know are going to be good and going to be solid, and stick with them. Unless you learn something that like you've done catastrophically wrong, it's best to really kind of stick with those titles and not change them super often. This next thing is one that TpT did not specifically say. This is conjecture on my part. So just being totally transparent about that. And that is that frequent searching could, for a small group of people, hypothetically hurt your ranking. So frequently searching for where your products are ranking could theoretically, hypothetically, hurt your rankings. So hear me out on this. If I am a new seller and I have a product, it's not getting any views, it's not getting a lot of traction, like people are not really finding this in TpT search. And so I'm just trying to like get a feel for where this is, and I'm obsessively searching for it. Okay, that's the key word, obsessively. I would have a hard time thinking that like you would search for your product one time and you see it one time and you pass by it in TpT search, or you don't buy it, or you don't wishlist it, or whatever. And then TpT is like, okay, well, Lauren didn't like that, so nobody else will like it either, right? Because that's not how personalized search works. But if my product is not getting a lot of traction on its own, and I am one of the only people who are ever seeing my product in TpT search, and I'm looking for it often, and every time I find it, I don't buy it, then that to me theoretically could impact my sales or could impact my rankings. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you're a new TpT seller and you're obsessively checking your product rankings, you might want to stop and just choose those keywords, choose those titles wisely in the beginning, and then just wait until TpT releases this new tool. So this is the last piece of information, that TpT is working on a new tool that will help us, or supposed to help us understand where our products are ranking and give us a little bit more insight on our resources. What is the click-through rate through search, things like that, and how they are performing, since we can no longer go and search for our products in TpT the way that we used to. They're hoping, their plan is to bring that data to us. Word on the street from the people who are in beta testing is that it's not good yet, but that TpT, they're listening to them and they understand and they want to make it better. So that is what we can hope for. From what I saw at their webinar, it looked really hopeful to me. And so I'm crossing my fingers and hoping that we get access to that soon. I'll put a link down in the description for those who may want to be in beta testing. TpT released a link during their webinar, or provided a link during the webinar for anybody who might want to be in the beta testing for that, and I'll drop that link down inside of the description. So here are my thoughts and opinions on all of this, because this is obviously a really big deal. To say that this has impacted revenue for a lot of sellers is an understatement. For some people, like their livelihoods are at stake and they're seeing their business that they've worked so hard to build just kind of like swirl down the drain, right? So this is a big deal. And before I share my opinion, you should know that yes, when they originally released this back in August, September, I was negatively impacted. Since they've started this rollout again in January and they are rolling it out, and they have said that a small majority, so a slight majority, I guess you'd say, of buyers are in personalized search right now, or as of this past week. I have my sales have been good. There, I've not seen anything astronomical. I've not seen sales shoot through the roof. Like I've not seen anything like that. But it's about on track with the growth that I would expect for the work that I've put in. Okay, so I'm just laying that out there, that's how it's impacting my store. And that is that it doesn't really seem to be impacting very much. I can understand though, especially if you're a large seller or a seller who's been on TpT for a lengthy period of time, that this could be really catastrophic, because what I am seeing in my own store are that my resources that used to be on which weren't very many, okay, there weren't very many that ranked for popular keyword search terms in like the top 5. Those resources are not selling like hotcakes like they used to. They're still my top sellers, but what I'm seeing across the board is that more of my products are selling. Whereas before, yeah, like the majority of my products sold, but some of them wouldn't sell at all. And some of them only sold like maybe once or twice a month, if that. And so now I'm seeing more resources being sold versus it, and my top resources are kind of like coming down to like middle class, right? It's like very much a middle class world for my resources right now. And it seems like it's kind of closing the gap between upper class and lower class. And everything's kind of moving into middle class right now is what's happening in my store. And I'm okay with that because overall my earnings are up, and so I'm okay with that. However, I can see if you were a top seller and you had a lot of resources, not just a handful of resources that were showing up for, first 5, first 10, first page for very popular search terms, that this would be catastrophic if you're experiencing the kind of leveling that I'm experiencing right now. So this is not a small thing. However, I personally believe that it's all going to be okay. Like I do. I believe it's all going to be okay. And as a business owner, and we're all business owners, but of course it's easier for me to say this when I'm not hurting. But as a business owner, it's TpT's responsibility to increase their earnings and to stay afloat during an economic recession where teachers are not getting paid anymore and they're having to pinch every penny possible. And one of the graphs that they showed during their webinar was that for the first time ever, while yes, earnings are up for those in this personalized search compared to those who are not in personalized search, earnings are down, and teachers are downloading free resources more now than they have in previous years. So that means that teachers are being more frugal with their spending, which we all understand that. And they're being more selective with how they're spending their money and how they're accessing resources. So with that in mind, I do think that it is smart and good for TpT as a whole and for us as a whole that TpT is looking for ways to increase revenue during this time, during this season. And I do believe that there's more at play here than just TpT's personalized search. There's been a lot of changes with Google and traffic that Google is sending to TpT. There's been a lot of changes with Pinterest and how Pinterest is sending traffic to TpT or not sending traffic to TpT. And then, of course, we're in a recession. Like, these are not small things that we're dealing with. And I think that those are important things to keep in mind, when we're seeing sales down across the board. And I might be alone in thinking this. I don't think I'm alone. But I personally when I was at the webinar, like I felt some of my faith in TpT being restored. Do I trust everything that they're saying? Not necessarily. I mean, they are a business and they're in the business of making money, just like we are, right? So I don't trust everything that they're saying blindly. However, I felt like they were on the right track. Like I really did. I felt really good walking away from that webinar. I felt really good. Would I have felt really good if, my income had been slashed to 50%? Probably not, because it wouldn't have provided a solution for me. So I understand why many sellers may not have been happy with that webinar and may not have walked away feeling the same way that I felt. So I get that. All of the feelings are all valid. What I will say is if you're someone who's new and you're like watching and reading and hearing everything that's going on and you're perusing the TpT forums and you're inside of some of these Facebook groups, remember that the majority of people who are doing well right now are not going to talk about that because it feels a little bit like rubbing salt in someone's wounds to be like, well, my store is up, right? Well, I'm doing well. I don't know what you're doing wrong. Something like that feels like rubbing salt in wounds when it's clearly not anything that's under that seller's control who's experiencing a sharp decline or a decrease in sales. It's their livelihoods. Remember, as you're hearing and as you're seeing, try not to, if you're the type of person that's seeing this and you're like, well, now I feel in a panic. Is there really a future for teachers pay teachers? If I work hard, is it really going to pay off? Or am I just going to be like the rest of these people who put all this time and energy and effort into building my business and then it can just be like pulled out from under me? I think just remember that there are people who are seeing growth and that your story does not have to look the same way, and don't let it panic you. Stay on course. And if you're one of the people who's experiencing a decline in sales, stay on course. Do the things that you know have historically worked for you, but also make sure that you are building your own audience and building your own business apart from TpT. It's scary when things like this happen and your sole or primary source of income relies on the decisions that somebody else makes. That is a very scary and very vulnerable place to be in. And it's something that is outside of our control. And while we cannot control everything, we can't control recessions, we can't control wars, we can't control catastrophic events that may happen and sweep through like COVID did and hurt our businesses. Like we can't control everything. Look for things that you can control. Can you control growing your own audience? Can you control offering your products or offering your resources on your own website? Can you control building that email list? Can you control driving your own traffic to TpT? Can you control adding a new stream of revenue for your business? Look for the things that you can control and focus on those things and continue to do what you know to do. This is not the first time that TpT has changed up search. It won't be the last time that they change it up. And I feel really, really confident in this seller community and how extremely talented and how intelligent everyone is, that a year from now, we're going to be in a much different place, a much better place, and have a much better understanding of how personalized search works and the kind of impact that it has on our own products, and to be able to capitalize on it to help grow our stores. I would love to hear you weigh in on this situation. Drop a comment below. Let's talk about this. Come talk about this inside of the Free Rebranded Teacher Facebook group, inside of the community. I would love to hear your take on this. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like it and subscribe. I put out weekly content for TpT sellers to help you grow your TpT store. And next week, we are going to have special guest Steve Buck, who is going to be talking about how to create templates for your store in order to save you time with product creation. I can't wait for you guys to hear it. It is an awesome episode, and I will see you guys in the next